of us. It's 10:01. More people coming in? Well, I guess we can get started. It's 10:01, and Gary, what's up first?
Yes, we'll start with roll call today. It is Tuesday, July 28th. Chair Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher is at another event and hopefully can join when that's completed, and Commissioner Schrader should be on her way. We'll start with coronavirus update. Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management, Incident Commander of our Emergency Operations Center. Go ahead, Nancy.
Oops, you're on mute, Nancy.
I hate it when that happens. All right, thank you. So in the state of Oregon today, there are 17,088 positives, which is up 984 from last Friday. We have 289 deaths in the state, 365,478 negatives. Clackamas County has 1,283 positives, which is up 56 from last Friday. And we have 34 deaths. 35,478 negatives. Multnomah County has 4,039 positives, which is up 226 from Friday. 82 deaths, which is up 4, and 80,882 negatives. Washington County has 2,553 positives, which is up 147. 22 deaths, 51,673 negatives. Statewide, we have 151 that are hospitalized, which is down 15 from last Thursday. We have 44 of those individuals are in ICU beds and 25 that are on ventilators. Statewide, we have 157 adult ICU beds available out of 774, and there are 769 ventilators available statewide. So some of the EOC accomplishments that we had last week, we distributed 458 food boxes, which is serving about 925 individuals. And I just want to say a thank you here for Teresa Christopherson. She really took this project and made it her own. And she has a lot of people, of course, working with her on that team, but that has been extremely successful during this COVID period. We've housed 4 individuals at a COVID shelter. Behavioral health Go teams had 10 events last week. Public health was looked at 84 new cases last week and conducted 3,439 tests. And we completed 18 requests for PPE, which is up significantly, which has been, for a few weeks, was around 5, and that is starting to shoot up, I think, as we see some of the supply lines closing down again. And our Public Inquiry Center received 111 calls. Public Health is working 60 outbreaks as of 7/25. The average new daily contacts is 54, and persons under monitoring are 224. We also distributed or are distributing a request to our county advisory boards for our long-term recovery efforts. Requesting, that they let us know if they are willing to do some support and commitment, and to advise the county, our county commissioners, as well as our county administrator, on some of the priorities and values as we move that forward. And that is my update for today.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a comment. Knowing about numbers and the comparative numbers I spoke to last week, I think yesterday Clackamas County had 7 new cases. Multnomah County had 119.
Yeah, we are seeing the actual cases go down for all of the counties. We're not sure why yet. We're not getting too excited about it yet, but we definitely are seeing some lower numbers this past week.
And Nancy, just to confirm something, I recall this question being answered or the statement being made, but just to clarify, so if there's a company in Portland, let's just say, and they employ 50 people and they have an outbreak there, and 10 of them live in Washington County and 20 of them live in Clackamas County, those 10 are going to be cases cited for Washington County, and those 20 will be cited for Clackamas County, correct?
That is correct, because it's where they live.
Right, it's where they live. So I just want to just confirm that for the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and it does get confusing, but it is where the individual lives. Yeah.
Well, I would say that the public is starting to take this seriously. I can tell you everywhere I go, it's rare to see someone without a mask. So the public is taking it seriously, and that's good. And I think that's part of the reason why the numbers are going down. I even refused to meet with my sister and a couple of cousins because of this virus, because that's one of the number one reasons we have cases is gatherings. So very cautious to not do that. I mean, Ken was over for dinner the other day, the four of us, and we sat apart too. So anyway.
Yeah.
I had to use binoculars to see him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I had one more thing too. I just wanted to let you know too, we just heard this morning, the governor is going to be sending out something around noon today about schools, and is going to be doing I think a media event at 1:30. So I did want to mention that as well. I didn't put that on my notes. I just now remembered that we got that information. So we will be watching it, and we'll take notes from that as well.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to say on Sunday I was in Portland in the morning and in the afternoon, and I would say that your observation about what you see in Clackamas County, I would agree. A lot of I see, but what I saw in Portland was both morning and afternoon was not the same. A lot of people not wearing masks.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Any other questions? Thank you, Gary. Can she leave?
Not yet. I have a few updates, commissioners. I signed 2 agreements on your behalf under the COVID-19 emergency declaration. I emailed them both to you, and quickly let me share what they are for the record. First was approval to apply for a grant to the, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for an emergency services grant, COVID-19 CARES grant. We are asking for $2.5 million, which will be used for homeless prevention services and vouchers. This would go to Health, Housing, and Human Services. And I signed our second reimbursement to the state of Oregon for CARES Act funding in the total amount of $1.6 million. They only asked for county administrators to sign that, so I didn't need board signature, but I wanted you to know I did that on your behalf. So if you like, you can ratify that today, or we can wait until Thursday's business meeting to do that. What is your preference?
Move to ratify, Mr. Chairman.
Paul, that was a second. Yeah.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to ratify. Any further discussion? Please poll us.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher is not here. Commissioner Hubbardson,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Here. Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
4-0.
Thank you, commissioners. Second, an update on when your hearing room will be physically ready with the technological upgrades to allow both in-person and Zoom meetings to occur simultaneously. I previously told you that would be ready by August 1st. Our contractor has told us they need a little bit more time, so it will now be completed by Friday, August 13th. So my question for you, commissioners, you have 1 week remaining of sessions the week of August 17th, and then you go on recess for 2 weeks. I'm recommending that if you are willing to hold for in-person meetings until you come back from your August recess, that day after Labor Day, September 8th and 9th. Of course, it's your call. I've received feedback, as have you. Well, other jurisdictions are meeting in person and doing Zoom. What's your problem in Clackamas County? Well, I would offer we're one jurisdiction. We don't compare us to other jurisdictions. And I'm telling you, our staff has said your hearing room needed technological upgrades to be able to effectively do the joint Zoom and in-person meeting. So I just simply want to ask, would you like to be in person on the week of August 17th, or would you agree to hold until after Labor Day, which is my recommendation?
After Labor Day.
After Labor Day.
Paul?
Well, we all got to be on the same page. So whenever it is, You're right. A lot of jurisdictions are doing it, and even our retreat yesterday was arranged to be in person, and we didn't do that either. So it seems like there's a reluctance to do that. I'm ready when everyone else is ready.
Martha? You are on mute if you're talking.
I'm okay until September, because part of the issue for me, if it isn't ready for Zoom, because I think we get more participation with Zoom. I have no fear about getting together personally, actually, quite frankly. I could go either way. It's just that if we can't do Zoom on the 17th, I do think it increases participation. So here we go. So we can wait. I'm okay.
Okay. Gary?
All right, those are my COVID updates. Any final COVID questions or comments for me or Nancy? Otherwise, we'll move on.
I just wanted to let you know that I did respond to Representative Dresner's email. Want to make sure we were connected, and I said that we have a lot of requirements of us, and we still have not actually received any money back from the state, and our general fund cannot support things that we're not sure we can get paid for. And so I'd appreciate any help she can give us on securing. I said it's going to cost us probably $45 million. That's a figure I've heard from somebody. You, I think. Yeah, so about $45 million, and we can't spend general fund dollars without some security that we're going to get it. So anything you can do to help us, please help. Paul? You're on.
I just want to mention that our participation may be up, but there's a lot of people that don't have the ability to connect virtually, don't have good internet access, or don't have the devices. So there is a block of the population that is not able to meet with us other than live. So I just want to we need to acknowledge that.
And people will be able to come into our hearing room, Gary?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right.
I won't do them a lot of good unless we're there.
Yeah, we agreed we're going to be there after Labor Day. So, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, very much. We'll move on then, commissioners. We have quite a list for you today. First, if you could please bring in Cheryl Bledsoe to the room. This item, commissioners, dispatch agreement for Aurora Fire. We have Cheryl Bledsoe, the director of our CCOM Center, to give you a quick update. This is on your consent agenda, and you've already been briefed on this prior. We just wanted to make sure you had no final questions. So Cheryl, please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, commissioners. This, like Gary said, will be on the consent agenda. We actually started providing dispatch services on July 1st of this year to the Aurora Fire Department. By our charter, the member board of our fire and police user agencies have to vote by 2/3 majority to bring on another agency to provide dispatch services for. And so they voted to do so in October of this past year. And we've spent the first 6 months of this year getting technically ready to bring them on as of July 1st. So we received the dispatch agreement from Aurora Fire Department on June 23rd, which is why we're now seeking the counter signature by the chair of the Board of Commissioners. Aurora's fire department call volume is about 1,000 calls per year, so it's less than 1% of the call volume that we answer for in Clackamas County, but we have begun providing that fire dispatch service to them. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have any concerns today.
Paul? You're
Microphone.
Thank you, Cheryl. I do have one question, and that is in recognition of past difficulties trying to attain and retain staff, for this line of work. And knowing this adds a little bit to the workload, 1,000 calls per year is not a lot. What's that, about 3 per day, about 3.5 per day? My question, on all recognition of that, my question is that how are we doing on the staffing? Are we in good shape?
We are getting there. We have 3 open vacancies right now that we're currently hiring for, but we are up to 31 certified dispatchers that are able to both dispatch and call take. And then we also have an additional 6 certified call takers right now. So we've been able to split 911 call taking actually from dispatching, which actually has really decreased the workload for the dispatchers who before now we're having to both answer the calls and provide dispatch at the same time. So we still have about 4 people that are in training currently that are on their way to certification, and then 3 more that we are set to hire for an October academy. So we are at 94% staffing, which is the highest CCOM's been in at least its 20-year history so far.
Great.
Yeah, well, great. I know that sometimes that results in some overtime and long hours and very difficult work. So kudos to you and your staff, and just convey our appreciation for their dedication and hard work. On behalf of Clackamas County, thank you.
All right. No other questions. We'll see you on Thursday if you're there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheryl. All right, if we could bring in Dan Johnson next, please. Commissioners, next is Transportation Maintenance Development Agreement. This is also on your consent agenda for Thursday. You've had several policy sessions about this already. This is just one last chance for you to ask any questions before you hopefully approve it on Thursday. So Dan, please go ahead.
Not sure what to really expand on beyond that introduction you did. Commissioners, nice to see all of you. There will be on your consent 2 development agreement amendments. One is for the Beaver Creek structures, which is the new structure we're constructing. And essentially what that agreement or what that amendment is doing is simply modifying plans, because there were small plan modifications, adjusting some timelines, and reducing that price, which we discussed with you previously. Secondly, there will be a corresponding amendment to the agreement for Abernathy's site, which basically syncs up the timelines between the 2 agreements. We handed out, and Commissioner Savas, we had an in-depth discussion around forecasts and our financials. We forwarded that information out. I believe Gary did to the entirety of the board. We didn't receive any questions, so if there's anything in addition, we'd be glad to answer that right now.
Any questions? I don't see any.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dan. All right, next, if we could please bring in Chris Lyons and Mike Besner. Commissioners, this is Park Avenue Parking Garage Fund Balance, and we need your direction and confirmation about that fund balance.
And Christina, can you please keep me in this? Thank you.
Yes. All right, so whoever's going to kick it off, please go ahead.
Chris?
Yeah, it was going to be Chris.
All right.
There it is.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Lyons, PGA. Just wanted to give you a quick update on the Park Avenue parking garage as part of the Orange Line. So we learned, staff learned this month that TriMet has potentially obligated roughly $300,000 of unspent Clackamas County funds from the Orange Line to an expansion of the Park Avenue parking garage. They have asked the FTA, the Federal Transit Authority, for permission to use roughly $20 million for that project, which is a combination of federal and other local monies. We're clearly not happy that they've moved forward on that without consulting with us first, but at the same time, going back on the request to the FTA could potentially damage the regional, our regional reputation with the federal agency. So at this point, staff is recommending we wait and see what the FTA's response is on that, which could come, according to TriMet, any day. And then, in the very near future, we intend to have a conversation with TriMet around improving our coordination so that we can preclude things like this from happening in the future.
Gary and then Paul.
Yeah, just so could Dan or Mike go back to the beginning? How much did the county give for this Park Avenue project? And it was from general fund, correct? Is that correct? How much and where did it come from?
20 million.
So the entirety of, it wasn't solely to Park Avenue, but it was the entirety of the Orange Line project. It's a $20 million commitment on Clackamas County's behalf. maybe too much information, but if you recall, the federal government changed the match percentages from a 60-40 to a 50-50. So they did what was called recalibration, which meant that there were some elements of the project that were reduced. And then there was some additional revenue secured from the region to try to fix that funding gap of about 10%. In regards to reductions, most of those reductions really took place in regard to like parking facilities. So the Park Avenue parking facility was planned to be sizably larger than it is now. And also there was the additional one, and I just totally forgot, over off Johnson Creek in Milwaukee, that was also taken from a structure to a at-grade parking facility.
At Tacoma.
At Tacoma, thank you very much. At the time, FTA had said they were not interested in reinvesting dollars that were saved on the project back into the project to add some of these components back. And apparently that opinion has changed with the information that Chris had just talked to you about, or may be changed, and we'll figure that out.
Okay. So my question, comment, commissioners, is this is the county's money. So do you want it back, or do you want to retain it in the project? And that's kind of the direction we're asking today.
Paul?
Yeah, I had a discussion with staff about this. I'm a little bit shocked that another agency would obligate us to a $300,000 expense. And so, Mike, that's troubling. Staff's touched on that. I just think it is for something that was taken away from Clackamas County. And then we have another take on top of that. Doesn't seem to be very fair. But my question to staff is, or Gary is that if the money to be returned to us was a certain amount, or we can't tap that 300,000 from there, we got to throw in another 300,000 of general fund, or what? Where does the money come from?
No, it doesn't cost us. That's the money we would have gotten back from the federal government, which I thought was more than $1 million. I'm surprised it's only 300,000. We would have gotten back.
Well, Jim, if I could have staff answer, because I don't think that's the right answer. We're getting more than $300,000 back.
Are we?
Right now,
it's roughly 300,000 total.
Yeah.
Well, in our discussion yesterday, Chris and Mike, that amount of money that was brought before the board for the unspent monies of the Orange Line, that was in the millions. So that was, and we were asked, what do we want to do with that? That wasn't 300,000, that was in the millions.
The millions was overall, not the portion that came out of the Clackamas County funded portion. The project itself, I don't remember the exact number, but let's say it's 15 or 20 million. And what we were told is that the county's portion of that is 300,000. So we've overspent by 300,000. So the money would either come back to Clackamas County, or, as Chris mentioned, TriMet did put it in their application to the FTA to get the funding to add the extra floors to the parking garage. And the FTA, TriMet has said they are very confident that the FTA is going to approve the request based on other requests they've put in recently in other places.
So in essence, that it's not going to cost us money. It's not going to be money that's going to come out of the general fund.
Correct.
All right.
All right, you done, Paul?
I'm done.
Before I get you, Ken, I just want to add, I want to say something. This is a cheap investment to get the rest of that structure built. I thought we were getting more money back, but it's a cheap investment. This is probably, it's interesting because this is part of the funding in the Metro measure that was supposed to help build this. But I'm excited that for 300,000 we can get the additional 2 floors. I was surprised it cost 20 million, but anyway, Ken.
Thank you. Since this occurred before I came on the board, or much of this did, I want to make sure I understand what's going on here clearly. So when the orange line went in, part of the construction included Park Avenue parking structure. When the cuts occurred in the construction of the whole thing, we were told we would get money back that we had in effect ponied up because we didn't get as big a structure as we originally had bargained for. Our portion of that money is $300,000. So you're telling me that TriMet committed our $300,000 without asking us to go forward and get $20 million from FTA to complete the structure. Do I have it correct?
I guess one nuance is they were seeking permission from FTA to be able to use all of the unspent monies, which was a collection of both federal and local, for this purpose.
Yeah, they're not asking for an additional 20 million from the FTA. They're saying, can we use the unspent money on the parking structure? They need special permission.
So there's $20 million of unspent money, and 300,000 of it is our part, so to speak.
Yeah, the 20 million might not be 100% correct, but it's in that order of magnitude. And yes, that's correct. The 300,000 was of the portion that the county has already paid.
Okay. And Chris, your recommendation is to not essentially not get upset about this, even though they should have talked to us first, because of the objective of getting 2 more floors on that building, correct?
Right. I think it's a combination of this. This is a priority project for Clackamas County, and it could potentially damage some relationships if we went back on that.
And I might just add, Commissioner Humberston, we're a little upset. I don't think I'm saying don't be upset.
Yeah.
And we're going to express that, and we're going to be working with TriMet. I mean, we're forming a strategy on improving communication with them moving forward in general. Anyway, we were already implementing that and reaching out and establishing better relationships with them. But what we're saying is that we think we should proceed with this right now, but we're still going to be addressing it.
Okay, and then I'm going to throw something out. I hope it doesn't throw a monkey wrench into anything, but cross-laminated timber can be used to build parking structures, as we know, down in Springfield, and it's considerably lighter. So I don't know if they have looked at that as an option for this structure on top of the rest of the building. Something to consider. I'm done. Thank you.
Paul.
Yeah, well, I have a question for Dan or Mike, whoever can answer it. And that is that on this T2020 measure, included in that funding for the Clackamas County portion was the parking structure. Now that's been withdrawn. Where did the money stay in Clackamas County, or was the money taken from Clackamas County's share of the T2020 measure?
So not all the money was taken out, but it was changed. It was changed to 1 or 2 million instead of the original number, which was somewhere between 15 and 20 million. I can't remember. I don't have an exact accounting for it, Commissioner Savas, because there were changes that happened all over the region. We just know that the final numbers in the measure, the county, the percentage of money coming to the county was essentially the same as the one we had last reported to the board.
Yeah, so they took some money out of our share from that, and then as I recall that we were going to get 180 million for the Sunrise portion. That was cut to 140 million. So essentially about a $50 million whack.
No, the Sunrise is still 180 million. It's not 140.
It was reported 140.
There's 2 different projects. One is the planning and design of the entire thing. And then one was just the construction. So the amount we got was 180. Okay. So that didn't change.
Okay, but the parking structure money was subtracted from us.
Well, I don't know that that's the case. They did a lot of shuffling, but again, the final percentages that came out, we were roughly the exact percentage that we had previously reported to the board a couple months ago.
All right, thank you.
All right, so thank you. We're not
We're
gonna
looking for a
fight it
decision
now.
point. Decision point, commissioners, keep the money in the project, or would you like to ask for a refund to return that money to the county?
Keep the money in the project. We need
Yeah,
the priority. Yeah, Paul.
So something we discussed yesterday was if we get FTA approval and the project goes forward, I think it's a strategy for us to then say to try and get our money back. But that's a suggestion. I'm only working on behalf of the taxpayers. That's my only thing. But I wouldn't do that until we got FTA approval.
See, I would do the opposite. If we don't get FTA approval, then I'd ask for the money back. Martha?
Well, both. You don't have to, because it can't, it's not, if there's no project, it doesn't go anywhere. It's still ours.
So I've been trying to follow this. Transportation is not my bailiwick. So basically it's money just sitting there and it is not enough to do the project. Is that what I'm to understand at this point?
No, it is. It just, the way the FTA process works, they have to specifically approve the use of the added funds to go towards this element of the project.
Okay.
And that's what TriMet has officially requested of the FTA.
All right. So if we get a yes, then we can go forward with the project with the money. Will it complete the project?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm okay with that.
Okay, great. You got your
If that's okay.
your
Yep,
answer.
seems right.
Hopefully they put bathrooms in it.
Well, there's
I
that.
will say, if we don't get the FTA money, then I agree with Paul. Let's get our $300,000 back.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because aren't people expecting that to be built? I mean, that's kind of, the community wants to see that built, do they not?
Yes.
I mean, that's my impression, yeah. So, okay.
All right, great, thank you. Commissioners, thank you, team. Moving on, if you could please bring in Elizabeth Comfort. Next, commissioners, preliminary official statement for full faith and credit financing. Elizabeth emailed you this information. It's a chance for you to provide any input or feedback because this is due today. So Elizabeth, if you'd like to give a quick background, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Good morning, commissioners, and thank you, Gary. Today we are presenting you with the preliminary official statement for new debt that we're going out for, a total of $53 million. I just lost the exact amount, $53,805,000. And this is a combination of two current debts that we have, refinancing those, and one new debt for the facilities road maintenance structure. And yesterday we had a call with our bond counsel, and we are doing very well in the rates that they have proposed. We always try to, in our restructuring or refinancing, we try to save at least 3%. We have up to potentially 12% savings in interest on the refinancing. So this is a very good market. So the document that you have is to just really review and have any feedback or input from you of any changes, but we presented the county's financial standing and all the particulars that they require, and I'm sure you're familiar with the document. So today I'd like to ask if you have any questions or comments for us to take back to our bond counsel for this document. The sale will go next Thursday morning, so we want to be ready for that.
Great. Paul and then Ken.
Yeah, just Elizabeth, can you remind me in this material you're incorporating the light rail debt in that, correct?
Correct. The refinancing of that, yes.
Right, and that amount, that balloon payment was how much?
$7 million.
7 million was a balloon, and we're bringing in more than the 7 million of that debt because there were payments, right? There were like annual payments as well, or it was just that one payment?
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
My understanding is that the total light rail debt that we have, that we were making payments every year on, and then we had a balloon payment as well. So my question is, you answered that, yes, this helps refinance or flatten out that balloon payment. But is it more than, is it the other remaining debt as well being incorporated into that?
It's 2 refinances that we're doing, and the balloon payment will still be at the end of this. We're getting a lower interest rate. So the structure's the same, the period is the same.
Okay, thank you.
Ken,
Once you've done the refinancing and gotten the cash for the other project and everything, what's the difference between the payments currently and what your payment will be in the future?
For the
whole
refinance,
Yeah, but the old, if you will, the old package and the new package, what's the difference?
we're looking to save about $500,000 a year on the annual payments.
So your annual payments will
Up to.
actually, even with the financing for the transportation building, your payments will actually go down.
So I'm sorry, let me clarify. So the debt for the transportation facility will be paid through the transportation department with different funds. So we're separating those two. The general fund will be continuing to repay for the other 2 financing loans. So there'll be 2 different revenue sources.
So the general fund will be 500,000 less.
That's what we're anticipating. Yes, it all depends on how the sale goes next week.
Okay. And what is the yearly payment on the transportation facility?
Let me see if I can pull that up. It's approximately going to be 1.3 million.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Do you need a vote on this or?
No,
All right.
you already approved this in April. This is simply the bond mechanisms that Elizabeth submits. So.
Oh, I have one other, Mr. Chairman, I have one other comment. That was, I wanted to make the point that for the public who may be listening, is the vehicle registration fee that we passed a year or 2 ago is not part of the payment for this building. This is from other funds. The VRF was still committed to roads as we have told the public.
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I mean, it's great you can refinance it at such a decreased rate.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Next, please bring in Andrew Naylor. Commissioners, this is a proposed change to the county code regarding surplus property and the disposition of surplus property. So I'll ask Andrew from County Council to share with you the proposed change.
Good morning, Commissioners. We wanted to bring this in issues because it's a pretty minor edit to the LCRBs. We didn't think it really needed a full policy session, but obviously we can revisit that. Our code allows for the disposition of personal property in 2 ways. If it's under $5,000, there's no competitive process involved. So this is when you want to get rid of a computer or some cars or things like that. If it's over $5,000, the code says you have to do a competitive process to try to maximize the return to the county to get the fair market value of whatever piece of property is being donated or sold. There is an exception in our code that allows donations without any sort of process when you're giving it to a public agency or to nonprofits or to certain shelters, which is a good thing. We want that kind of flexibility. The problem is there's no oversight in our code. So a department could just donate, for example, a police car, and there'd be no sort of question as to whether that could have maybe been sold to return revenues for the county if there's a better option. So our solution to this problem was to add a clause into the code that simply says any donations have to be approved in writing by, we propose, the county administrator. It could certainly be this board, but it's just that one extra administrative check, just in case a decision needs to be made that no, the value of this piece of property that you want to donate is too high and we think you should sell it or receive something in return. So that is the proposed edit to the LCRBs. I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to look at the actual draft, but it really is just a sentence that says, all sales or donations of personal property under this provision of the code are subject to the written prior approval of the county administrator or their designee. And if this is something we want to move forward with, we'll go ahead and prepare it for its first reading in an upcoming business meeting.
I'm good.
Jim's on mute. You're on mute, Jim.
I'm good with it.
Paul?
Yeah, I just want to just say that I'd like to know what all our options are. And I say this because after years and years and years in the private sector, you know, there's people out there that have taken a livelihood, so to speak, out of finding some of the loopholes in acquiring excess government property without going through the auction process, and that's in multiple jurisdictions in the region, and you know, even to the state north of us as well. So I think it's really imperative that we have a thorough, fair process, so that if it's not to be auctioned, that it actually is for a legitimate cause, that it ought to be audited regularly. But you know, there's a loophole there, and I just think that we ought to be cognizant that maybe something that might be estimated worth $5,000 or less, maybe worth a heck of a lot more, actually. And because if people are making a livelihood of taking something that we sell for that they bought from us for $4,999 and turning that a week later for $10,000, certainly something's out of line.
I believe in, hopefully Elizabeth Comfort is still on and she can correct me, but I believe finance has a running list of all personal property donations that they keep tabs of. So we have that function. And the proposal that we're discussing today, I think it would address your concern because it would add that extra check. So somebody is going to be able to look at this and say, hold on, why are you donating it? I mean, that is the idea of adding this clause in here.
Well, I mean, my point is that what they feel is worth a certain amount to be under the threshold may not be realistic all the time. And I'll just tell you that it's not, because lots of people out there make a living off of that. So I mean, if something's worth twice as much, it's the taxpayers, it's the county who's being not getting the advantage of that, right? Let's just say that adds up to you know, 100 pieces of equipment sold for half the price of what the market price is. Well, that's 100 times $5,000 is $500,000. That's $500,000.
Well, in this case, well, Ken, oh, are you done, Paul? Ken.
So a couple of questions. One is, who makes the judgment as to the sale value? And do we have somebody somewhat independent who can make that judgment, an appraiser or whatever you want to call it? That's my first question. And then, Paul, at least for Clackamas County, do you have any examples of where any specific item was actually bought and sold where it, in effect, cost the county?
As to the first question, if we have any sort of independent appraiser, I'm not sure if we have, you know, sort of a third party that can review this. Elizabeth, do you know exactly how we assess the fair market value of personal property before it's donated or even before it's sold?
I don't, but I have a note. I can find that out, what our process is.
And I apologize, Commissioner, what was the second question? Was it directed to me?
It was actually directed to Commissioner Savas. I was curious as to if he knew of a specific incident in which a piece of county equipment was sold for X amount of dollars and somebody bought it and turned it around for twice the amount or something to that effect, as he's commented on.
I'm going to be very general in my response. Yes.
Fair enough. I have no problem with the change in the policy, but maybe we ought to take a look at how we're doing the appraisal aspect of things, just to be sure that, you know, there's no shenanigans, if you will. But I'm okay with the change that's being proposed in terms of having the county administrator sign off on these things.
Yeah, I just make it perfectly clear. I have no idea whether or not, nor am I insinuating or suggesting there's shenanigans. All I'm saying is that the estimation of fair market value maybe is mistakenly underestimated at times. Whether that's intentional or not my call. I'm not even making that statement, but I want to address your word shenanigans.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But my law enforcement background immediately jumps to that potential. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
My cousin Shenanigan is going to be a little upset you're using his name in vain. Gary.
So commissioners, today is a simple question for you. Do you want to add a line that I have to approve anything that's donated, or it could be you? And that's the first question. Second, if you'd like a further analysis of this whole section on how you define the 5,000 threshold and an appraisal, what that means, certainly we can do that for you. But I am recommending you approve the check of myself or you having to approve the donation, because it is happening now when I think there needs to be some more oversight. So that's the immediate step I would recommend.
Yes and yes.
Yes.
Yes and yes.
So Andrew and Stephen, I propose we go, if you agree, let's go forward with the quick change on adding the administrator, and then let's have a second round of review on appraisal definition and guidance, and then who determines the value of 5,000. A little more guidance on who determines that. Can we do that, please?
Will do.
Great. So
All right.
we'll look forward to a business meeting then on this code change.
Martha, are you good? Okay, great. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next, this is not on your agenda, commissioners, because I just found out last night, but your housing emergency declaration expires this Friday, August 1st. It's already been a year, believe it or not. You last approved it August 1st, 2019. It expires August 1st, 2020. You have not used the housing declaration in my memory since last fall, so it's been a while. However, do you want to extend the housing declaration, the housing emergency declaration, for an additional year? And if so, we'll get it on your business meeting agenda. So seeking your guidance, what you'd like to do.
Well, the housing problem's been solved.
I think you were being sarcastic there. No.
Yes. Martha.
Yeah, what would be the advantage? It still gives us more flexibility, doesn't it, if we extend it?
Gives you more flexibility in permitting and code changes that you may choose to make. It will be your decision, of course, but it gives you more flexibility in those type of housing related issues or decisions.
So
Right.
I'm okay with extending it. But
All right. So Paul.
I'm just thinking about how we legitimize to our constituents that if we haven't used it in so long, that it's actually an emergency. And I think you wear out the word emergency, frankly, to some degree. So my opinion is a little bit different. I think that in light of how much money the taxpayers are now obligated to between the housing bond and the housing supportive services bond and the COVID relief monies, that there's certainly a lot of resources out there to do a lot of things. So I think at some point we need to be realistic and be able to straight face and say why it's an emergency and why we need to do this.
Well, okay. So once we build things and those monies have been spent and people aren't homeless anymore, I think we can say it's not an emergency, but we're still a ways off from that. So I'm good with moving. So Paul, was that a no?
Well, I'm suggesting we rethink it. Do we foresee a need? I mean, to use this ordinance for the purposes intended. I'm not saying that the housing problems in the world are solved. I'm just saying that the purposes of this ordinance are unique. Is there a unique need out there to keep this going? Because this is not about, whether or not someone loses their home or not. This is about being able to circumvent our temporarily or whatnot, some of our planning processes. This is more of a land use issue. Is it not, Gary?
It is, and because the staff's not here to be able to answer your questions, we could have staff present next Tuesday at either issues or a quick policy session for you to have more time to discuss this with staff present.
Let's do that.
I just want to make an informed decision.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's have staff prepare a session for you next week. The world will not end if we wait a week before renewing this. So we'll get back to you next week with staff present to answer your questions.
Ken.
I just want to make sure that this question gets answered, and that is, can they say that there is a specific need for the emergency clause to streamline the process because of projects going forward?
Yeah, that was my question.
It's a very specific answer to a very specific question.
And I'm sure staff is always going to want to have the flexibility. So, I'm asking for a specific example like Ken is, because they're going to be inclined to say, yeah, we want to have it there because it's convenient.
Yeah. And I agree with Paul, it shouldn't be about convenience. It should be about the need.
All right, next Tuesday.
Got it. We'll come back to you next Tuesday. Thank you. Next, commissioners, quickly your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, July 30th. It is an evening business meeting at 6 p.m. It's entirely a consent agenda and a pretty long one. There's nothing that appears controversial in my opinion. However, if you have any questions on any item, if you would please let me know prior to Thursday and we can answer your questions for you. Next, advisory board and commission appointments. Christina, you could please go forward.
So the one ABC this week, it's with the Clackamas Workforce Partnership, currently has 5 openings. They have 25 members and they are on 3-year terms. There were 6 applicants and 5 of them were recommended. 3 of them are, 3 of the 5 are new and 2 are currently on the board. The people are as follows. Jada Rupley, it's her first term. Beth Lyons, first term. Tracy Rumka is first term. David Plodkin is his second term. And Gordon Harvey is his second term.
So they're all good candidates. I would recommend
Is that a motion?
Yep, so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we appoint the slate as suggested. Please poll us.
Okay. Commissioner Humbertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard?
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next item.
Great, thank you. Next, courthouse funding option. Commissioner Savas asked to bring this back to the agenda with some further information that staff has provided to you, commissioners. It was emailed to you yesterday afternoon. So, Commissioner, and we have several staff in the holding room that are happy to answer questions about it. So, Commissioner, if you'd like to kick it off, or
yeah, if you could actually stick it on the screen, maybe do a share screen and put it up there. I mean, it's not, I think not all the information I wanted to have there is there as of yet. But I just wanted to let you know that following our Thursday business meeting, business meeting, I did meet, or Tuesday business meeting, whichever it was. I met with Elizabeth and Chris Story, and we discussed this. Only this element. There are many elements of this in order that would accrue savings beyond this amount of money, beyond the 45 million you're looking at or the 49 million you're looking at. There's other aspects, but we only had an hour, so we covered an hour. The response from staff, I believe, and I don't want to characterize what they said, but essentially that it is technically feasible, or it is technically possible to do this. Mr. Story had a question that he thought legal counsel should answer to a firm, and I did call up Mr. Madcore following that meeting, and he affirmed that yes, it could be done. So essentially, what you're looking at in the shaded column to the right, the 45 million would be just the potential savings of interest charges when you look at a 20-year versus a 30-year for a GO bond. And then the next line down or group of numbers down is a full faith and credit, 20 years versus 30 years once again, and a savings of 49 million. Let's just say 50 million. So that's basically affirmed, just looking at that one aspect. And then if you look down below, a couple of notes staff made where it says policy directive notes, the board decided, or direction was, the courthouse project is not dependent on external new money, but more importantly, I think this one is the one that's most relative. Minimize impact to the current service levels supported by the general fund. And I'm taking that really seriously because there's obviously about at least 49 million reasons right there where it will minimize the impacts even further. And I project that when we look at a staged financing, meaning a deferral of payments due to the model that we're currently looking at, the P3 model, not necessarily the P3, but the stage financing that requires it, that those numbers will be much higher, far higher than the $49 million. So you could still apply any of this 20 versus 30 years over that as well. But if the policy directives, if the policy directive is to, again, minimize impacts of the general fund and maintain services, because I think the biggest loss is going to be the cuts to public safety. That's the biggest chunk of the general fund, and over that 20 or 30-year period, that's going to be a substantial hit. So my proposal, or wanting to look at, and Gary asked me the other day if I wanted additional staff assistance on preparing the rest of it, and yes, I do. I would really like to have, at least your curiosity on behalf of our taxpayers, on behalf of the general fund, on behalf of public safety, to look into this deeper. It's consistent with the board direction. And if there is a general obligation asked of the taxpayers, as I mentioned before, my proposal would be to refund that money back so that there is no net impact to the taxpayers in the following years, only in the upfront years. They would get the money back in a reduced imposed tax rate that we do annually at the budget. And if we wanted to do it even further, I would say that you could either extend that so they get their interest back, the money they paid back plus interest, and potentially even a permanent minor tax reduction. So it would be a minor ask up front with dividends beyond and above what they put in. So it'd actually be a small tax break.
Probably don't have my money. How would you explain that to the public?
I like the idea.
I think you would say that, hey, we're asking you to help us in the first 10 or so years of the bonding, and you're to get all your money back plus interest, and we're going to reduce the tax rate by a certain amount. And that's where I need the staff help. I need a little bit of financial help with the tax assessor and bond counsel and everything else to find all the creative ways of doing it. But it can be done. And if we can save the taxpayers, again, even 49 million, even the minimum, that's direct general fund impact. That's directly affects public safety and all the other services that we provide in the general fund. Your grandkids, my grandkids, our kids are the ones who be paying this bill. So all I'm asking for is just support to explore it. That's all.
I don't have a problem with that. If we want to do parallel, at least get the information.
It's still.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, and again, I'm not a finance person, so forgive my stupidity here, but you're going to be saving interest, but we're still going to be paying, okay, a debt loan. And how is that going to impact as we currently go forward with the services that we offer? It's the real reason we're doing the P3, looking at that a little differently, is because it'll cost us longer in the long term, but in the immediate, it won't have as much of an impact on our service level and the dollars that we're spending.
Well, yes, sort of. I'd say, Martha, that, you know, because of all the payments we need to make in the next till 2029, when we defease some of those debts, that we don't have the ability to make those $7-8 million a year payments.
Right.
That this requires. So that's why we're extending this partially 30 years. That's why we are going to be paying a lot more interest, because we're not going to be making payments in the first sizable payments.
Right.
As you saw on that 30-year schedule, we're going to be making deferred payments. So basically, it's like buying a car, but you don't make payments for the first 3 years. Well, you pay for that. You know, you pay for that.
Your interest goes up. Yeah.
That's right. You're paying for the interest. This is a means of saving the taxpayers money, because they're going to get it back. So essentially what they do is that not only does this basically takes a tremendous load off the general fund in those first, whatever the numbers are. We could go 10 years, we could go 15 years, but the fact that we would pay it back, and it would actually have a long-term less effect on the general fund. It is all those dollars saved are dollars out of the general fund.
But you can also refinance the project. I mean, you can do the bond thing 5, 10 years, 15 years out and save the taxpayers a lot of money. And you actually have an argument to say you can save taxpayer dollars if you pass this bond, because it's coming out of the general fund. I have Gary's hand up.
Yeah, please bring in Elizabeth Comfort. Commissioners, let's handle this once and for all. You're confusing staff and you're confusing the public. We've talked about this so many times, so let's resolve this. So Elizabeth, please, do you want to comment? You're on mute.
I have 3 screens, so my mouse was far left. Apologize for that. Thank you, Gary. Again, good morning, commissioners. And if possible, I would like to bring Chris Story in as well, if that's okay.
Bring him in, please.
Because I would like to say, yes, Paul, Commissioner Paul, you are absolutely, spot on that there is savings with doing 20 versus 30 years. And what I'd like to share is about timing. And we have an opportunity to pursue looking at the P3 model. We've approved just a couple of weeks ago to continue down that P3 plan to further look into that. Once we get further down the road, because we won't need, at least 85% of the funding needed for 2 to 3 years. And so taking immediate action, kind of maybe putting the cart before the horse, because if we look at this down the road, then we'll have current rates to look at, and then also the timing of the funding. We can compare really with what the bids we're receiving back from P3, comparing it to what a full faith and credit loan would be. And then we also have the opportunity to, as you say, go to the voters. Do they want to pay for this via property taxes, or do we want to look at paying it through the current general fund dollars? So I think if we, it's all about timing. If we want to push this out, I think we have some time, but right now I think we're on a really good path, and I would like to continue with that, because I think it's going to give us more opportunities if we look at the P3 model and continue down that. We'll have a lot more information at our disposal, and current information, down the road, 2 to 3 years. And Chris, I'd like you to, kind of correct me, make sure I'm translating this appropriately.
No corrections, just framing it for the board to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. The question of the interest savings that you're seeing is purely regarding the term of the debt, 20-year versus 30-year. It doesn't matter which path you go, general obligation or full faith and credit. In fact, you may notice that the overall interest cost is lower with the full faith and credit because the GO bond presumes an optimization for the tax rate to be as low as possible for the rate for the taxpayers, which means you actually have an unleveled debt service where it's smaller at the beginning and then it grows as you go across time. With the full faith and credit, we're able to make larger payments up front because we already know that we're going to have that revenue coming in and we're not limited to a new tax rate showing up. So from a pure cost to the taxpayer standpoint, given this shockingly low interest rate environment we're in right now, the full faith and credit is actually cheaper. But then there's the question of, is it new money or current money coming from the current assessment for the property taxes that the county levies that supports the general fund? So I wanted to be clear, those are two different questions that staff will need direction on. And what we have heard thus far is, one, don't presume that you're going to get a general obligation bond. So find a way to support this project, not reliant on new money. So that's why you have the full faith and credit structure that you have. And the second is that we can have shorter time periods as far as the interest cost, 20-year versus 30-year. The longer term was selected because we also heard a policy directive that you wanted to ensure that there were the fewest amounts of impact possible on the general fund, below a strain on the general fund. So you're trading, in essence, the higher interest costs for maintaining a higher level of service at the time that you're taking out the borrowing. And that's a policy trade-off that the board can decide at any time to change, and we will happily execute whichever way you want to go.
Thanks, Chris. That was kind of my question, actually.
I just want to just add that I agree with what Elizabeth and Chris had just stated, and what they brought to my attention on Thursday or Wednesday when we met was that the need for the money is not immediate. It's 2-3 years down the road, and that makes perfect sense. What I'm really talking about here is just having this as that's all along. That's really all I ever asked for. I'm still asking for is have this as an option alongside as we go forward. That we don't rule this out. We actually rule it in and have the numbers in there so we comparatively make the best decision possible. The savings are real. And I think as an option, it can be explored, and it does not have to be immediate. So I'm in a completely agreement with what staff's just stated.
So there's no reason why we wouldn't want to do this, is there? I mean, to have kind of a parallel path.
Or an option.
Mm-hmm.
Or an option, okay. So right now we're still, go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry I lost my button. I wasn't able to raise my hand real quick. One factor you need to be aware of, though, in general, pursuing a general obligation bond, which would be our match for the state capital funding, is in essence us delivering the project ourselves. If there's not an equity component to a certain extent as part of the project, you are unlikely to attract a P3 partner who'd be willing to do the project. So an early exercise of the GO bond where we're borrowing in the next 3 years, and that's our funding strategy, may preclude our ability to do the P3 procurement process. We don't know, that may be the appropriate strategy because we don't have firm numbers yet. That's what the P3 process is doing right now, is they are refining the numbers and refining the costs. So the decision point for that will probably happen in the next 12 to 18 months. But I do want to flag, as you're thinking about this, that there is a trade-off there.
All right, Ken, and then Paul.
I'm not sure I follow what the trade-off is, Chris, before I get into my question. So would you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. So one of the reasons why a P3 might be willing to build the courthouse for us to make that deal is, in essence, they get a return on their equity investment, not just operate a courthouse, right? And
okay.
What we, and in essence, what we're exploring is we figure the cost of capital is going to be a bit higher if the P3 does it, but that their operating efficiencies are going to be lower, and that net, it will be cheaper for the county to do it that way because what they're saving on the O&M pieces, because they, you know, and it makes intuitive sense, right? Government is good at borrowing money at cheap interest rates. We're not so good at delivering projects cheaply. I think we can all sort of acknowledge that as a general truth. And it's whether or not that trade-off is going to reflect itself. When we get those proposals in, we're going to have to do a comparison against our baseline to say, would it be cheaper for us to do it ourselves, presuming we fully fund O&M?
So our initial, you know, when we gave a policy directive, it was to not have this dependent upon external new money, and it was to minimize the current any impact of the current service level and staffing. And I've been talking with staff. If we went with a full faith and credit, my understanding is that would have a dramatic impact on our service level and on our staffing. I have been out talking to individuals about the three basic options, the GO bond, the full faith and credit, and the P3. And I have found no appetite, even with the explanation that it's cheaper, at least on the interest rate side, for an increase in property taxes at this time. And when I let people know that if you do the P3 at the end of the discussion, I don't try to lead the discussion in the direction I want it to go, that it will have no immediate direct impact on their tax bill. That's what they're looking at. It's that simple. So I'm still convinced, even more so after talking to the public and talking to staff, that the P3 is the best way to go with all of the factors taken into consideration. I have a question to Gary. If we continue to go down the road of looking at the P3, is it a distraction from that to also explore Commissioner Savis's viewpoint? Does it cause you heartache, if you will, or headache, whatever you want to call it, in terms of getting this project moving? Because the thing we fail to think about all the time is it's not just the fact that it could fall in the river, which, you know, we never know when an earthquake's going to occur. We already know the building is unhealthy. And we've had to close the building because it's unhealthy on more than one occasion. So we cannot wait another 20 years to get this done. So
if I may,
Yeah, he asked Gary a question first.
So my question is to Gary, because I'm hearing from Gary that staff are seeing us waffling back and forth. And I think that we have to make a definitive decision awfully damn soon.
So the P3 is not a funding mechanism. You still have to decide how to pay for it, which we will do the analysis of full faith and credit and a GO bond. I mean, I just heard Elizabeth say that. We need to go through the P3 process you've already approved to finalize the numbers involved, and that's when you decide how will you pay for this. So yes, we could look at what a GO bond costs, but there are implications to that, and it impacts the P3 model. So what I said earlier, with a great respect, colleagues, it sounds like we're confusing. Are we stopping at P3? Are we doing a P3? And that's what I'm trying to say. Can we please clarify?
I think we can, I think we should do the P3, keep going down that. I like what Commissioner Savis is working with our finance people. I think that hopefully can inform what happens with the P3 when we look at this. I don't see them as, again, I'm not a finance person. I don't really see them as mutually exclusive, but I do think that the P3 pathway right now is the pathway we've started. So let's continue, because my concern is if we don't do anything now, we'll lose it completely. I think we've got like a 5-month window before we move ahead, and if we don't, we'll be sunk. So anyway.
So I have
You guys are jumping in on your hands aren't up, so Paul's hand's been up.
I wasn't
Raise
done.
your hand.
I apologize.
Yeah. So where we're mixing apples and oranges, I think that's what Gary's trying to say. They're not the same thing, so we can't conflate the two, please. It's just going to make it more difficult. I want to just go back to what I talked with Chris and Elizabeth on, and what the question was that Chris suggested I talk to Mr. Madcore about. And I think that's key to maybe alleviating some of Commissioner Humberson's concerns. Was it's not to stop or stall or change direction. We continue on the direction we're on, right? That's all we do. And if there is an ask before the voters, which would be a little bit of an ask and a refund in that scenario, that it would be in the ballot title that if it does not pass, that we would probably be seeking full faith and credit bonds, full faith and credit financing. So it is, as Mr. Madcore stated when I spoke to him last week, it is doable. Doesn't stall anything. It just gives us an opportunity to look at it and weigh it and save, and ultimately save the taxpayers possible money. And it's really, I think if it's that sizable, it's giving them the option. We don't stall anything. We're not delaying anything. All we're doing is putting a side-by-side opportunity and not closing the door on that at some point in time in the future. There's a way of navigating this.
Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair. So I wanted just to touch on one thing, because our goal is also to be able to pay the debt on the courthouse starting in 9 years. We have some current debt, which we just talked about a little bit earlier here in issues. And then those refinancing, when those are paid off, then we are looking to have those funds available to pay the new debt on the courthouse beginning in 2029. You know, the best scenario is that we don't have to go out for any new debt, which is, you know, what we really would prefer. However, if we travel for scenario A, if we travel down the P3 model, we get into that and we're down into 2029, we do have the opportunity at that point to say, would it be best, do we want to look at buying out the P3 and either with the full faith and credit or with the GO bond at that time at a later stage? But right now, we don't necessarily have to look at borrowing $94 million. And again, Chris, I turned to you to make sure that I am speaking correctly, but that is I think our first best plan is what we're looking at.
I mean, I want you guys to go out on RFP for a P3. We can save money in the future by, like you said, in 9 years, we can afford it out of the general fund, or we go to the voters and say, voters, you want to save some money? We'll pay this P3 off if you support it. If not, we're just going to continue to pay it out of the general fund. So I think we need to stay on the path of the P3, and I don't want to stray any other way. The voters are not going to support this now. We don't need them to support it now, because we're not going to have it now.
We're not asking for it now. All I'm saying is it could be, I'm just keep it as a side-by-side option along the way of looking at the interest payments and finding the cheapest way. Like staff said, P3 is not how you finance it.
Right. We have to figure out.
I'm not arguing for or against P3.
So can I ask a clarifying question, Commissioner Savas? It sounds like you're saying put something in front of the voters for comparison, and I'm not sure I'm tracking.
No. I'm saying all along for the last 2 years, I've been trying to ask staff to put together, when you come to the county commissioners with how we proceed forward, that you have alternative ways as we go forward to look at that financing element and explore any and all ways along the way. So if we decide that, hey, there's a huge savings in here that can be had, and the voters could contribute to that savings and then get that money refunded back, why not? if it amounts to $50 million and less load on the debt or on the general fund.
Anyway, so we're moving forward on the P3. Any of this other stuff is kind of a sideline on how to pay it, right? So we're going to go out with the RFP to build the courthouse, and what we're discussing outside of that is what's the best way to pay for it, correct?
Well, we'll decide on that until December. Staff will come back to you in December if that's what you want to do on an RFP. You've not made that decision yet. And yes, we will continue to study the costs, whether it's full faith and GeoBond. All that is still being reviewed. That is still.
Okay.
Yeah. So the only ask here today, Jim, is this: continue on the path we're on, but open the door for exploring alternative means of financing the project.
Yeah, we're doing that anyway, right?
Well, not this option. That's why I'm trying to add this option in.
I'm not interested in adding an option where we have to ask the voters to help pay for it. We already know the answer. It's no.
I'm not willing to go out and ask the voters for a tax increase. I'll tell you that right now. Not for a building.
This is not anything immediate. I don't know why we're having such a hard time with this. I
don't know why you're having a hard time with this. We've had this discussion.
I think there's 50 million reasons to have a hard time with it. We owe it to look at it, explore it. If you can't look at it a year from now or 6 months from now and keep that option open, you're doing a disservice to the taxpayers.
Martha?
Microphone.
Oh.
Now video's off.
We don't always have to take the most expensive way of doing something right in this county. We don't have to.
We're not.
Commissioner Schrader, your microphone is off and your video is off. Your microphone is still off.
Mic's still off.
And we lost her entirely. Okay.
So we'll observe as we sort of wrap up this conversation. What I'm hearing the board say is you're interested in making sure that the financing options are on the table. And I can assure you that Elizabeth and her team, and I've been partnering with them to support that effort. We're definitely looking at all of them. What we're recommending, or the direction we're going down, is defined by the policy directives that you as the board are giving us. And the question that you're raising, Commissioner Savas, is could we save $50 million in interest by having a shorter term? When you use that $50 million number, that's all around the term of a debt. And the longer term is related to minimizing impacts to service levels in the general fund. If the board is desirous of having the shorter term because the interest cost is lower, that increases the amount per year that you are paying out of the general fund. And if you look at the materials we're providing, this is all estimates, but it was around $800,000 a year. It would be a good walking around number. And if that is something that you want to do, which may necessitate some adjustments to other areas of the general fund, we can definitely do that. That action is not dependent upon any sort of outside approvals or processes. If that is what the board wants to do, we would be happy to do that.
So like I said, we're just moving forward with a P3. We're looking at various options to fund how we pay for that P3. Right?
Yes.
So,
that's correct.
Okay.
That's how and that's what I was going to say. I'm sorry I lost all of you. But I think we should move forward with the P3. And I think that these other options of looking at how we finance it as we go down the road are what's critical and important.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Commissioner Savas is trying to get at.
I thought so.
Well, I think he is, but I think so. Right? So, Paul?
The mic's
You're on
on.
Microphone.
Mute.
Yes, that is keeping it open. There is a nuance that Chris is pointing out, which is valid. And that nuance again being that earlier was the policy directive of not looking at external sources. And you would need to have that option to say, if maybe change the word to, if possible, not look at external. But if you want to be totally consistent with the two policy directives there. But again, it's about the financing. It's not whether or not it's a P3. And so we got to be careful not to conflate the two. The other point that Chris made that's valid is that if you shorten the payments are more. That's true. And that's where the GO aspect would help alleviate that. And you could make the taxpayers whole by actually ultimately giving them a refund, all their money back.
Yeah, got that.
Okay. So
I was not finished
Ken.
back 5 minutes ago. So, if you don't mind, what I want to make sure of is, one, that we're going forward just with a P3, because what I'm not interested in doing is doing a 20-year or a 30-year bond of either kind independent of a P3. Because what that does not take into consideration by comparison is the costs of operating, maintaining, and repairing the building over that 20 or 30-year period of time. And there's some real benefits to not having those on the table for the next 30 years for subsequent commissions. So if this is an attempt to just finance it by either a 20-year GO bond or a 30-year GO bond or a full faith and credit bond, and only do that and not do a P3, then I'm not in.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I just want to be clear where we're at. Because if all we're talking about is doing 20 years versus 30 years as part of the P3 financing package, that's a different question. So, and again, I am not willing to go into staff layoffs and increase taxes to build a building when we have another alternative to do this without impacting staff, without impacting services, and without directly and immediately impacting taxpayers. So, I can't be any clearer than that.
Paul.
I'm done.
Paul.
So Ken, if those are your goals, then you would want to keep all the options open.
I don't want to keep the options open of the 20-year and 30-year bonds independent of a P3. That's what I'm telling you.
If it resulted in layoffs to public employees, you'd want to keep those options open, because that $50 million is going to come somewhere. You're not going to explain where the $50 million is going to come from.
No, I'm basing this on the way you make a payment, and the way it's structured under the P3, as we retire the bonds, roughly the same amount of money that we're currently paying for our current indebtedness will be transferred over to be paying for the P3 with a 1-year spike. And that's based on Gary Barth's presentation on the P3 options. So that does not increase the amount of money that you have to take out of your general fund for the payment. And yes, I agree, it may cost more interest, but it doesn't, paying that more interest addresses all the other issues.
Gary.
We're confusing the issue.
All right. I agree, Commissioner Savas. We're confusing this. I think you're all saying this. I think you're actually all agreeing here, although it doesn't sound like it. Staff is continuing to follow the P3 model and is putting all of the data and information together to come back to you in December with a full financial analysis and the costs. We will continue to look at the full faith and credit and a GO bond over 20, 30 years. That's continuing as well. December is a chance for you to look at all the numbers and decide, is this the route you want to go, and here's how to pay for it. So everything is on the table under the framework of a P3. I request that staff do their work over the next 4 months, and December is the time when you can make that call. So everything's still on the table. We're still talking about it. You have very important decisions to make, but not until December. So I think we're all saying the same things, just in different ways. So I think we can move on.
Yeah, I agree. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you.
Okay, we're actually out of time, but there's still 2 issues left on the agenda. One is for Commissioner Schrader, the joint meeting attendance and protest response. And I'm not sure if you'd like to extend issues right now. You can come back at 1 o'clock. You do have
I just wanted to have that just to get a sense of what we were saying. And obviously, I guess there was a
Press conference.
press conference that we just found out about. My only concern was I do think Commissioner Savas should have been involved with that too. But I think it gives us some clarity on where we need to be going with this. And it doesn't appear as if we're, I don't know, Paul, what do you think? Are we overcommitting? Are we committing in an appropriate way? I had Drenda pull this up so we could look at it.
Well,
I
I'm
just
not.
want feedback on that.
Thank you, Martha, for that. I think it's important to have Commissioner Fisher in this conversation. I had no idea that there'd be a press conference. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, Drenda, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't anticipate even having another meeting, this group, until a couple months from now. So somehow this whole timetable's been changed. It's very inconsistent. We were supposed to come back, this week and go over the material and figure out what we were going to do. And Commissioner Fisher ought to be part of that. You're right. I probably should be part of that as well, because now I'm missing out on what's really going on. So I'm at a loss. If Commissioner Fisher found out about that over the weekend, then I wish she would have shared that with me. It doesn't seem to be that dissimilar to other matters that we're going to be talking about this afternoon either. So, if I'm assigned as a liaison and I'm not involved, it's hard for me to really respond if I'm not part of something that's going on right now to have that information.
So Gary, let's move it to next week when we get everybody here. We don't need to we have a full afternoon.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we have the document.
Thank you, Martha.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Communications is all that remains. So would you like to do that now or come back at 1 o'clock today? Or skip it?
I don't even need to do it.
Well, let's see. I'm being at home with my dogs who bark constantly.
I'd rather wait till 1:30 because I have a couple of errands to run. So Commissioner Communication could be short. That'd be great.
All right. We'll fit it in the afternoon.
I don't think at the moment.
Okay.
I don't have anything either. I'm just trapped like a rat. That's all in my house with barking dogs. That's my life. Okay.
All right. 1:30 it is.
1:30, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.